All right, well, thanks everybody for coming. We now have 62 people here, so we'll hand over to Lily McIntosh. Lily is the Biodiversity Systems Officer with Department for Environment and Water in the Science and Information branch. And Lily's going to talk to us today about NatureMaps and how to find species and make maps, which is a really good thing to have available at the moment with the grassroots grants just opening tomorrow. So over to you, Lily.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Robin, for your introduction and acknowledgement of country. So you've all signed up for a training course, well, not a course, just to watch me tell you how to use NatureMaps, but I first want to set the scene. There are a number of tools and portals out there for accessing environmental data and using GIS tools. NatureMaps is a fairly unique tool in that it is a free web app that gives you access to South Australian environmental data and some GIS mapping tools. The environmental data it covers includes fauna and flora species observations from the Biological Database of SA, or BDBSA, and several other environmental information layers, including vegetation mapping, biohistory, soils, and a whole lot more. Sorry, just not going across. So what is, why is it not moving? There we go. So BDBSA, that's our biological database of SA. It's a biological data management system run by DEW. I'm one of the person who primarily helps keep it going. It contains over 6 million records of flora and fauna, about 3 million of each. It's been going for over 30 years. It started with the Biological Survey of SA, which went from the 80s to the early noughties. And it has expanded since then to include a whole lot of other government data sets, as well as some non-government data sets from citizen scientists and other agencies, such as BHP even. So what data is where and why would you go to NatureMaps? So we mostly have BDBSA's species data in there. We do also have a stale data set from the South Australian Museum and the State Herbarium. So it is better to go to the Atlas of Living Australia for that data. And then the Atlas of Living Australia also includes all the records from iNaturalist, which I hope a lot of you are familiar with. It's a great tool for submitting observations of species you come across, have never seen, you don't know what it is, and someone can help you ID it. So if you do want to get to extra data that isn't on NatureMaps, you can always go to ALA, download that, and then use it in NatureMaps when you bring it in, but I will discuss that later. So let's have a look at NatureMaps through the lens of flora and fauna data. This page here is what you'll see when you open up NatureMaps. You'll find tabs with a toolbar of tools. There's various tabs up here that do different things. You'll find a search bar up here that's just for searching location information. And there's a panel on your left that welcomes you to NatureMaps. On there, there's a pretty useful link to a PDF that is really in depth. So for any keen beans that want to know everything about NatureMaps, go there and you'll find it all. Or if you're mid doing things and you're like, why is nothing working? Go back to the homepage, find that PDF, and you can work out what's gone wrong. And then I did task you with watching the help video before you came to this, but if you haven't, you can always go back and watch that afterwards. I don't think it will interrupt your day too much. It's like 2 minutes. And that will just show you how to use these flora and fauna tools to search for species data in a bit more depth than I'm about to. So here I've got a map up which is showing all the sneezeweed records. I did that by going to Flora Tools, Map Species, and it came up with a little search tool that I could just search in sneezeweed, and it popped out all the records. Now, if I want to know more about these records, other than they're just right there, I have the option of exporting all the records to a CSV file that will be read to your computer, or I can zoom in on a record after pressing record identify, and it will pop up with more information about that data point specifically. Or if you have a little more of an in-depth question to ask about fauna or flora records, you can go to your general query tool, which is under both flora and fauna as well. And that will come up. It'll give you the options of filtering by a small environmental area, locational area, sorry, like a park, or just the current extent of your map, or even a landscape region. And then it will give you an option of filtering by introduced species, threatened species, a species itself, or a date, things like that. And then once again, it'll pop up all these red marks, which are all the data that's come from your search. You can click to open a report, which I'll show you what that will look like in a second. And then it's also useful to click record identify in this so that you can then click on an individual point and it will pop up information about it. And then if you are unsure at all about the data that is shown to you, you can click on this link and it will bring up a fact sheet, which I'll show you again what that is in a second. So this is what the Excel file that will be printed out for you will look like. There's a whole lot of columns along the top and it keeps on going. It'll have information about how it was found, when it was found, which is the date. You will have to format the sighting date into a date format. Just go look up formatting cells in Excel if you're not sure about that. And there'll be information about species comments or any extra information that the observer found. So if you're unsure about what any of these columns mean, go back to this link here, description of the data source, and it will bring up this fact sheet, which has more information about our super table, which is just a fancy word for aggregation of data brought into one table. And then if that doesn't give you what you want, search for our website and it will give you more in-depth information. So why would you use NatureMaps over other tools for mapping specifically? Well, I'm assuming all of you are here because you don't have a whole lot of a mapping experience. You know a lot of mapping tools are complicated or very expensive. So I'll just go through some of the other platforms that might come to mind and why they have drawbacks or positives over NatureMaps. So we've got iNaturalist, doesn't have any mapping capabilities. It does give you the ability of uploading a record from a photo, and you can access data to then extract that you want. QGIS, which you may or may not have heard of, it's a free software package, but it is very complex and requires quite a lot of GS capabilities. You'd need to be watching videos for hours and hours to work out what you were doing there, and there's no data easily accessible through that. And then you've got ArcGIS, similar to QGIS. It's very complex, but it's also very expensive. So unless you're with a company or you're doing this for your job, it's just unfeasible to be using ArcGIS tools. Then you've got ALA, which is a wonderful aggregator of data. It's got data from all the museums, all the herbaria. It's got citizen scientist data, iNaturalist data. So you can get a lot of what you want there, but it does have very limited mapping capabilities. It is free and it's online, but you need a log-on for that. And it doesn't have any environmental, essay-specific environmental layers. It's NatureMaps, it's free, it's online. You don't have to download any programs, create a log-on. You don't need to remember any passwords. It has pretty simple mapping capabilities that you can work out for yourself or watch, read, whatever you need. And it has a lot of essay-focused environmental data and layers. So I'm just going to now get into actually using NatureMaps for mapping. Please keep in mind that some of these things I'll show you just for demonstration purposes. They're quite made up and they might not directly relate to the work you want to do, but they should give you enough understanding of NatureMaps that you can then go away, play with the tools with confidence and make your own maps that suit your purposes. So you're going to get into NatureMaps and you want to find the park, the specific location you want to work in. So you can go to find address or location in the search bar, type in a suburb, type in a specific address, or you can go to your find tools up along the top, and that will bring up the NPWSA Reserve search tool, which is just your parks and wildlife, national parks and wildlife reserves search. Or if you do have specific coordinates that you know of, under general tools, you can go straight to zoom to XY and type in your easting and northings. And I'm going to use the find tool for National Parks and Wildlife Reserve. It brings up a drop-down list. I can scroll to where I'm interested. So I'm going to the Onkaparinga River National Park. This is what it zooms me to. So it zooms me straight into the park, gives me a bit of space around it. You'll notice that it's highlighted, the boundary, and it'll open up the layer tab in your side panel. And the layer for National Parks Reserves outlines is selected. If you do dislike having this highlighted and there, you can just unselect that, and then that highlighted outline will be gone. You'll still have the information for the name of the park, and if the map's got it on the base map, you'll still be able to see that where the park is, and that's good. So you'll notice down the bottom here of our map page, we've got a little box that has a tiny little map in it, and it says topo. This is where you select what base map, so what you're seeing on the underneath is. So you've got 4 options in NatureMaps. You've got topo, which is topology, so you can see shading of the hills. It's also got like different symbology for when it's a forestry reserve versus farming land, etc. And then it's got quite extensive indication of roads and a lot of place names all over it. You've got your street map, which is quite lovely and simple. This tends to be what I use because it makes a nice map. It still has national parks in dark green, so they're quite obvious. It's got some place names, but the roads are a little subtler on there. And then you've got imagery, which is simply just satellite imagery. This is the state-owned imagery set, but it doesn't have any place names written on it, so it can be a little hard to navigate in. There are overlays you can put on, which I'll show you a bit later, that you can add place names and add roads and add water courses and things to that if it's helpful. And then you've got the last one, which is land cover. This one can be not very helpful, but it does have a nice slider scale that pops up underneath it when you open it. So you can look at how the land cover has changed from the from 87 to 2015. And I believe if you click on the colours, it tells you what they mean. And yes, as I've said there, it is best to use what is simplest when you're making a map. It ends up looking better. So street map is the one to go for often. So I just want to point out a few of the helpful environmental layers that might help you with your specific project. So there's fire history layers. If you open up in the panel, the layer panel, you'll see there's a fire one you can open up, and then you'll see all these different options for layers. You can see fire over the last 10 years, fire over the last 40 years, fire history, etc. And they all have associated metadata. You have different vegetation layers. There's the SA vegetation layer, there's pre-European vegetation, and the native vegetation cover. You've got recreation trails, so if you're particularly interested in maintaining trails, that's there. You've got various overlays, which I mentioned for satellite imagery, with road labels, topographic, which has the roads and various other place names on it. You've got contours, which help you work out the topology of the land if you're wanting to know if you're going to take too big a hike or not. And then you've got administrative boundaries, so you can work out what local government you're in, what landscape region you're in, suburb, etc., etc. So we're going to get back into actually making a map. So I'm going to set the scene. I am in the Friends group for the Onkaparinga River National Park, and I want to make a map showing a river weed management plan. So I've got a data set that, I've got a data set of weeds that I've brought together. I'll load them onto my map later, but I look at my base map here, which is a street map, and I don't have the river going through here, which is unfortunate because that's what I want to work around. So there is a group of layers underwater that let me add on water courses to my base map. So you can see that here it's quite extensive. It's even got all the little creeks. If you investigate and click on each section of the water course, you can see more information, including names and stream order. Stream order just tells you if it's a small creek or a river, etc. But I've decided this is probably a bit complicated for my map because I don't really want to be able to see strongly all these little creeks. They're not helpful to me. So I want to change the symbology of this one layer. So I can click in on this layer. There's a little arrow next to it. I click that arrow and it brings up this in the panel. So I can turn on off layer visualizations, which means I can change what I can see in this layer. I click on that and I can change the visualization of it. So I can customize my layer style, and then I want to change the symbology or how it appears based on the data behind that layer. So I'm deciding I want to base it on the stream order, 1 being a very early stream, 6 being a river. And I can choose the start color, end color. It creates a little gradation between, and then puts that river on there so that it's bold in the middle. That's the Onkaparinga River. And I can't see too much all the other streams because they're not very helpful to me. So I zoom in on that, and then as I said, I have a set of data for weeds in the Onkaparinga River that I've taken from ALA or some other my own surveys. So I want that on my map. I can choose under General Tools, Upload Data. And this pops up, and I can choose files, search for it on my computer, brings it up. It lets me choose a name for that layer because it's going to add it as a layer. It'll also ask me which column in my data sheet is the coordinates, so the X and Y coordinates, so I have to input that. And then it will ask me how I want those points to look on my map. So it usually just brings up a pretty random symbology when it first puts it up there. I don't really want them to be purple and I don't want them to be a circle. So I can fiddle around with that and choose green as the color, change the marker to a diamond, and then it pops up all that data I loaded straight on top of my map, and it all looks nice there. And then you can see in the layer pane at the top, we've got the data I added there as a layer. So I could turn that on and off whenever I want. I can also change the transparency on that if I decide I don't want it as boldly on there. And you can do that with any of the other layers. So if I wanted to have this watercourse to be a bit more transparent, I could toggle that across and make it transparent. So what I want to show in my map now is the areas that we are going to do our weed management. So we're going to go along the river itself in a methodical method over a few weekends. So I want to make 3 different lines over the river, and here I've drawn on the lines. So I've gone to my draw tool, I've selected line up the top, and then you can click along the river and it will draw the line on. And then once you're done with one line, you double click and it will let you start a new line. So I've done that 3 times, but I don't like that all the lines look the same because that doesn't help with anyone interpreting my map. So I can go along and change the color of each line separate from each other. So I can select one of the drawings. Let's say I selected that one. This will pop up here with the name of the drawing. And then I need to select this little styles link. Select that and it will pop up this in my left-hand pane where I can choose a style from some pre-selected ones. So I've decided these colors and these styles are nice enough, so I can go along, selected green for one of them, orange for another, and I think that looks all right. I can also change the thickness of the line, but I'm happy with that one, or I could make them dotted if that's helpful to me. You can also change here to a custom style. I'll show you that for some of the other tools a bit later on, but it will be applicable here as well. Then I've decided with these lines, I also need to tell whoever's reading my map what each line means on that map. So again, under Draw Tools, I can go to the Text tool. I click on the map where I want text. A little pop-up will come. I'll type that text in, and then I'll click in another spot. And then once I'm done, I can change to symbolic what that text looks like. So once I'm done with the text, I again select one of them, go to this little pop-up here, choose the styles, and then I can create the text style that I want. You can also edit the text here if you've made any mistake. You don't have to do it straight on the map. So you can change the color, you can change the font size. You can see a little halo around the text. If you don't want that, you can get rid of it by making it 0 or make it bigger. But you can also change the angle of the text here so that it's not flat along there. So for here, I've changed the angle so that it's sort of in line with my line, and it makes it a bit more obvious that that's what I'm referring to. So here I've edited all these texts so that they align with their line, the color matches up, and the size is about what I want them. You can see here for the orange one, which I have selected, I've increased the angle so it sits there along there. And that's about all the information I'm looking for my map. But I just want to help people know where I am or indicate the direction of my map. So it can be a good idea to add a direction arrow. So again, under draw tools, you just add an arrow, draw it on, move it around how you want, and as you did with the text, edit the style. So I'm just about ready to export my map or print it off for my report. But I do think all these weed points, they're not actually adding to my map. They just add confusion. So I'm going to turn those off. And I also don't like that you can't, I've turned off the river at some point. I want that back on. So I'll go turn that back on. And then I'll export my map and it will look nice like that. And I can add that in my report. You need to remember that you want some form of title and or a figure legend that explains what your map means to whoever's reading your application. So that's a fairly simple one. I will now go through how you would do it with polygons. Polygons just being shapes. You probably all know what a polygon is. So for a new scenario, I'm at Blair National Park. I want to do some olive control. So I've mapped all the olive records using my flora tool for general flora tools. I've mapped all the olive records on Blair National Park. I've investigated those records a bit. I've looked at all the individual ones. Noticed that all of these ones are from pre-2015. A lot of these ones are more recent, so post-2017. So that's probably where I need to focus any olive control. So I am planning to do olive control in 3 stages, starting here, then moving along up to here. So first I wanted to draw this polygon, which is my first stage. So I go into my draw tools, I select polygon, and then I clicked on my map, all the points along the line for my boundary, for my polygon, and you'll see it kind of taking shape. It might seem a bit weird to begin with, but then it will look lovely. And once you're done, you just double click and then your polygons arrive there. And then you will want to symbolize your polygon so it looks nice again. So like you did with the line, select your polygon. It'll come up with a drawing box, select the style. Now in polygons, you can select a fill color and an outline color. Under your create your own style, you can select how wide your line for your polygon is, and whether you've got a dashed line or a solid line. And then instead of a fill color, you could select from these fill styles some different just like lines across your polygon. So if you don't want a fill color to begin with, you select up here on the color and you need to put transparency from about 20, it'll probably be up down to 0, and then you'll see the color disappear. So I've chosen my outline to be pink, so it's nice, it shows out nicely against the base map. And then I was experimenting with fill style. There's this diagonal cross. That's a bit busy for me. So I went with a diagonal across, and then you can see I've drawn 2 other polygons which fit similar style to the first one, but they have distinct symbology to the first one so that you can tell they have something different about them. I've also decided that all my olive points across the whole park are probably a bit misleading. I've narrowed down the points of olive data from 2018 onwards which nicely shows that you only have olives in surveys in these areas at that recently. And then I've decided I probably need to label my polygons. So I've done the same thing as I did with the lines. I select text, I've drawn the text, I've written the text on, and I've made it match my polygons. But I've also added a title this time. So that can be quite helpful if you put the title on top of the map, and it often makes your report or your application a bit smoother. And then once I'm happy with that, I can click export map or export drawings if I want to take those shape files and the text themselves, and I want to keep them for the future for another project. Because, probably should have mentioned this earlier, NatureMaps, you can't save a session. So you have to do everything you want at that time on the session, or you have to at least save it out of NatureMaps, which is exporting your drawings into a shapefile that then you can bring back in the future. And then you can redo the symbology later on. So now I've done that one, created my map. I do have to indicate in my report what these red dots mean. So I've just added a little text box over the top, post NatureMaps, to tell the reader what the red dots mean. And I've added a figure legend. This one's fairly easy to read, has clarity of the legend, and you can get some information about where your location is by the Blair National Park, and then some location information around it. So you might also want to use NatureMaps, not specifically for mapping, but other reasons for your grant application, such as wanting to know how long a walking track is from where you leave your car to your site, or how far the site is from road access or a walking trail, or even just how large that proposed site is. So we've got some measurement tools in NatureMaps that allow you to figure that out. There's one for lines and ones for shapes as well. So here I've got a site, which is just this blue box, and I want to know how far that site is from this walking track, because I want to know how far I'm going to have to bush bash through that, and I might have to change my site or change how I'm going to enter based on that length. So I've gone to my measurement tool, drawn a line, and it just pops up the distance of that line. If you were wanting to measure like a section of a track, you could use the line tool again and sort of click along the track, and it will pop up the length for the whole track that you've drawn a line on. But this doesn't show me a whole lot about how that will look if I want to enter this site. So maybe I want to turn on the satellite imagery so that I can see what the vegetation is like that I'm going to have to traverse through. And I also might want to know how steep those slopes are to getting from the track to the site. So I can go to the overlays on this layer panel, turn on contours, and then I've given myself 3 options down here for access to the site. Even though I'd probably have to walk all the way around here, it might be better in the end to enter from here, as it's less steep, shorter distance, but you can add things like that to your grant application. In terms of occ health and safety, another thing you might want to measure is your actual proposed areas that you're going to manage a pest on. So you can use the freehand shape or the polygon, similarly to how you make a polygon. to just draw over it, and it'll pop up a measurement for that polygon. You can change your units that you're measuring in from meters squared to kilometers squared, or I think there's even like miles squared, which probably would be silly to do that, but if you need it for your brain, fair enough. And then that's about coming to the end of my presentation. So I just wanted to remind you of 3 principles before you go off and make maps. You want to make sure you're using good visual contrast so that the colours you put on the map are contrasting to the base map and to each other. You make any symbology or text you put on the map legible, so large enough, and you want to simplify any visual noise that you've created in your maps. So these are 2 options of the same map. I've got the base map here of the basic topology. It's pretty busy. There's all these little buildings symbolized in it. Got lots of blue boundaries of various things and all the rivers. And then I've made my polygons a similar blue so you can't see them. And it's just a bit of a mess. You can't really see what you're seeing. But if you simply change the background map and you increase the colors and the size of all your polygons and text, it makes it quite a lovely map to look at. All right, so that comes to the end of what I prepared to tell you. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, they do, and they've all been very good putting them in the chat box or in the Q&A box if you can't access the chat box. So we have quite a few questions, Lily, and we've got everyone still engaged, so that's good to see. We didn't.
Can you still see my slideshow, or can you see my whole window?
I can see your questions slide.
Great. Okay, because I've moved to.
All right. I'll ask you the first question, Lily.
Great.
When creating maps, NatureMaps seems to have issues, including the legend and map in the one output, often crops out the legend. Is this a known issue and will it be fixed?
I have noticed that being an issue. I can bring it up with our GIS people, but I suspect that won't be fixed in any timely manner. So I would say it's often easier to make your legend posthumously or screenshot things when you're exporting your maps instead of exporting.
Okay. And wondering if there is an app under development for NatureMaps, please.
As in an app that you can download onto your phone?
Yeah, like iNaturalist.
Yeah, you can. So you'll never be able to submit data under NatureMaps, if that's sort of the question. You can access the web app for NatureMaps on your phone just through your browsers on your phone. It's not, there's a few features that aren't available on that, so it's not the most helpful thing often to use it on your phone, but you can still use it, and it is better on an Android phone than an Apple phone. But yes, there's never going to be an app that is separate to the web app.
Okay, and what format does data have to be in to be uploaded?
So it takes CSV, which is just comma separated values. So it's just an Excel, and you can save your Excel as a CSV when you go to save as, and it doesn't take Excel. You can upload shape files. You can upload KML files, I think, and I'm sure there's a few other options. But when you're in NatureMaps, it will pop up when you go to upload data, it'll pop up, these are the only acceptable formats.
Okay, so that answers that question. What format does data have to be in to be uploaded? Can you insert a legend block onto your finished map?
I haven't found an easy, lovely way to do that. There is some instructions in the NatureMaps PDF for that, but it's not a lovely thing to use.
And we've had somebody say KML didn't work. In response to, does NatureMaps only accept shape files for uploading as a layer? KML didn't work. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, that just means that that file type didn't work for them. I thought it did, but I thought I'd used it on KML. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure I can give too much more info because I thought I had used that before, and I thought I'd seen it written there.
Okay.
It might be a size of file issue sometimes. NatureMaps doesn't love very complex data sets, but I have loaded over 1,000 records on there a few times, so possible.
And are you recommending we use NatureMaps when we apply for grants? I suppose that's up to the people, but it is free and online, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't say how people will judge the grant application because that's not my place at all. But mostly just recommending if you can't access an expensive GIS tool or you don't have the time or
Are there any
capability
more?
for
No
some
more
of the
questions.
complicated ones, NatureMaps is just a good one for creating a really simple map that you can put on your application quickly and easily.
And just to let people know, we let our grants team know that we were running NatureMaps training, and they were very excited. They think it would be great if it was a good adjunct to people's applications to add a map in with their grant application. And we're just seeing if there's any more. How often is the satellite image updated in topology mode? Looks to be over 3 years old at the moment.
The satellite imagery, that depends on the location. So the Adelaide area is, I think, about a year old. And so it really just depends on who's asked for imagery to be taken and whether it's been stitched into the satellite imagery plane that's put on NatureMaps. If you go to SA Geodata, I think you can find like specific information about that.
Okay. And can aerial photography be shown as a layer, better resolution?
So the aerial photography on NatureMaps, there are different layers of resolution. So in different areas, the resolution is better than at others. And when you zoom in and out, it will show you different aerial photography. So if you're zoomed really close in over a house in Adelaide, it might show you their back garden quite well. But if you're doing the same in, I don't know, Kadina, won't show you the back garden very well. So it really just depends on location, and you'll just have to search around for that. It's the same on Google Maps, really. But yeah, we just don't have the buying power of Google Maps for aerial imagery.
Can I use NatureMaps with SARIG, SARIG?
I think I might need more information on what SARIG is.
Yes, if Sue Ellen could mention what SARIG is. And are there any other questions?
Oh, so SARIG is whole of government. Okay, I don't know if there's any specific links between the two. There is some of our data on SARIG. I'm just having a look, but not all of it.
Okay. What would be the easiest way to represent exactly what location you had put revegetation into, for example, via a camera location?
Might need to rephrase that. So I think the question is, do you want us to have that represented on the map, or do you want to create a map of where you've revegetated? Sorry, is there a...
They might be meaning they want to know exactly where they put the plants when they're revegetating.
Okay, well, so that data could possibly be on BDBSA if anyone submitted it, but it's not going to be there unless it was submitted to us. So you could search for that data if someone had submitted that. Or if you have that data, so you've gone around with a GPS and you've located each plant you've revegetated, or you just know in this general area there's those plants, you could put a large polygon in the area and say, in this area we planted 5 eucalyptus porosa or something. Yeah, sorry, that was just I'm sure I could answer it better if I thought about it a bit more.
Sally's just said map where we revegetated. Yes, exactly where plants were put. So I think you've answered that. How to make a map.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly where you planted them. You'll need to GPS them, or there's a few apps you can get on your phone for pinpointing things. You can even just do it in Google Maps, pinpoint each plant, write a note, and then you can download that as a CSV, and load that onto NatureMaps.
All right, well, we might get a last question, and then other people can contact you on your email address there. Do you think, Lily, if they've got anything further?
Yes, sure.
So the last question, can you upload data from Strava to show where people have gone in an area?
Yeah, if you can get that Strava data. I've never really looked too hard at Strava, but if you were to download a whole lot of Strava, I assume it's just lines where they've been. If you downloaded them all from a Strava app, that would just be a shape file of some sort. You might have to convert it to the right shapefile format, and then you could just load it onto your map for whatever you need that for.
All right, we've had one last question snuck in there. How do you load a shapefile?
All right. So that is a tool. I'll just go back to this PowerPoint slide. Let me just find somewhere that has the general tools. You would load it under the general tools tab. There is a upload data tool under general tools. So the first tab halfway across, there's an upload data spot, and you would just have your shapefile saved somewhere on your computer directory, which you would then load onto there, and then you can change your symbology, same as you would with a CSV.
All right, well, thanks very much, Lily. So if anyone's got any questions, contact to Lily. If you've got any questions about Green Adelaide Volunteer Support, send them to the email address that's on the top of the chat box. This was recorded, so you'll have access to it if you want to go back and have a look. And I'll just run through a couple of things that are coming up. So next week, there'll be a Green Adelaide seminar. So these happen monthly. I think, Nat, or regularly. And so next Tuesday on the 26th of March, there's going to be a webinar on citizen science. So NatureMaps will be part of that. Helen Owens and Jason Van Wienen from Green Adelaide. We're going to be talking about citizen science, iNaturalist, NatureMaps and that sort of thing. So that will be a good little prelude for that. And Lily is going to be running a workshop on NatureMaps training at our annual volunteer celebration on the 23rd of May. So if people need more information about the Green Adelaide Volunteer Celebration, contact your group coordinator who was going to distribute the details, or contact us here. If you want to know more about volunteer support, all the information is on the Green Adelaide website. If you want to sign up for the Green Adelaide newsletter, because then you'll hear about all the different things that are happening, the seminars and that sort of thing, then to sign up, you just go to the Green Adelaide website. There's a link there. We're going to be sending out a survey today to hear what people thought of the training today and how they found it. And just to run through, we've got a lot of events, training events for volunteers coming up in early April. So while we've got the floor, on the 8th of April, we're running a Meet Your Local Group session at Para Hills on the 8th of April at 6 o'clock. And this is for volunteer groups to increase their membership so that they get an opportunity to showcase their group, and we'll have public there and they can join, hear from all the groups and work out which group they want to join. So it's for environmental volunteer groups in that area, around the Para Hills area. We ran one recently in Semaphore, which was very successful, and we're going to do another one. We are going to do one in the city and possibly one out at Blackwood, a Meet Your Local Group. We've got a Planting for Success workshop happening on the 9th of April. We've still got vacancies in that. And we've got our Green Adelaide Volunteers Connect online forum on the 10th of April at 4:30. So it's an opportunity for volunteers to share information. And that's it for the events. So thanks everyone for coming today with the NatureMaps training. We'll look forward to your feedback. And thanks very much, Lily, for giving us some training in NatureMaps. We'll see if people need any more training, whether
You're
they need a
welcome.
follow-up session. Okay, well, thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining in, and we'll say bye-bye.